Let's start in the AFC North with the Baltimore Ravens. Looking like one of the better teams in the league. Once again, over under 11.5 wins per our friends and partners over at FanDuel.
Nice.
We could say now, right? You could see it right up on the wall. So Ravens, 12-5 last year, AFC North champions, and looking strong once again heading into the season. Thoughts on the Ravens for 2025?
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're looking very strong. They're looking like one of the few teams in the NFL. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was talking about this the other day, right? How many teams are contenders in any given year? I think he used 6 to 8 as his number and says, sometimes maybe it's 10 to 12. The Ravens are one of those teams, wherever you want to set the number. They're a team that looks complete. They look like they have a strong roster. They look like they have very few holes. We've given them some of the best individual units in the NFL in some of the content we've done already. And in Lamar Jackson, you have a quarterback that's a multiple-time MVP and capable of being the best player at his position or even the best player in the entire NFL in any given season. The question marks, if they exist around the Ravens, exist in postseason play, not in the regular season. So, it's kind of where you focus the attention for Baltimore. It's like they're probably going to make the playoffs, unless disastrous things happen. And then it's, can they get over that hump to be a real Super Bowl contender?
I saw Mina Kimes put out this stat a couple weeks ago through, I think it was using Aaron Schatz's DVOA, that the Ravens 5-year stretch and the Bills 5-year stretch are the top two DVOA stretches of play for non-Super Bowl teams. So when you're analyzing the Ravens, it's like, what do you do differently? Just play better in the playoffs. I mean, that's it. I mean, they lost to the Bills in the divisional round with the bad turnovers, Mark Andrews drop. But the Ravens, once again, have all the pieces offensively and defensively to be the best team in the league. And that over-under of 11.5 at FanDuel is the number one mark, the highest mark. They look like the best team on paper heading into the season.
And generally speaking, they're the one of these sort of contending teams that just need to play better in the playoffs, who I do think have let themselves down in the playoffs. I mean, Buffalo, I think, is a slightly different, question. I think they've had games where they've played really well in the playoffs and still lost. Baltimore generally, I think, have not played up to their level in the postseason, particularly Lamar Jackson, although last year I think he did. But overall, I think there's a bigger question about the Ravens in postseason play than there has been about Buffalo or certainly, Kansas City.
When we touch on key position groups and offseason additions, remember in the draft in particular, they go Malachi Starks in the first round and then get the falling Mike Green, Marshall edge rusher in the second round. Mike Green had his off-field issues. He ends up going in the second. We both thought he was a top 10 to 15 type of talent in the draft. So once again, the Ravens looked like they added a bunch of talent in the draft, but top to bottom, not really any weaknesses on this roster. Remember last year at this time, we were talking about their offensive line. We might have a rookie starting at right guard, at right tackle, questions at the guard positions. Didn't really matter. We're talking about Derrick Henry having his best statistical season. Lamar Jackson had his best statistical season. That offensive line is back intact. Receiver-wise, they bring back Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers. They bring in DeAndre Hopkins to see whatever he has left. I think anything he brings is a bonus on a 1-year, $5 million deal. They still have both Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely at tight end. Everything, and Derrick Henry, of course, coming back. And I think what we saw last year is there's games where Derrick Henry goes off late in the second half, much like he did with Tennessee. And they just have this extra component with the run game where it doesn't have to be all Lamar Jackson, but Lamar is the guy. He is the engine to this entire offense that makes it go, opens it up for Henry, makes life easier on the offensive line, and he could take over any game at any time. I think this offense looks elite once again heading into the season.
Yeah, and I think the same questions still exist in terms of the offensive line. I think last year has just shown us that it probably doesn't matter. They are, because of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, that axis, they're able to buy their offensive line grace that wouldn't exist in different offenses. So the fact that their guards may be Daniel Faalele and Andrew Voorhees, again, or some combination, Ben Cleveland, there's other options there. You don't feel great about any of them, even if Roger Rosengarten doesn't get any better at right tackle, which he could and should maybe do as a second-year player. It doesn't feel like it's going to be a problem because Lamar Jackson is freakish in his ability because of the stress that he puts on a defensive line, the way they have to respect his threat as a runner and capacity to take off at any time, the way they have to rush to keep him contained, and then the fact that Derrick Henry can just, bust through arm tackles like it's nothing. If you were pointing to this roster, this starting sort of 22, and saying where's the weakest point, I think you would say the offensive line, but we know that you change the math because of what they have in the backfield.
And then defensively, I think playmakers at every level, once again. Kyle Van Noy had a really nice year rushing off the edge. Odafe Owe opposite him. They've got some depth at edge. I said they had the best secondary in the NFL, one of the best units on our when we were ranking our top 10 units in the NFL. That's with the addition of Jaire Alexander as a buy low, oft injured cornerback. I don't know that they need him per se, but they did have a question at, I've been calling it CB2, but it's the outside corner in their nickel package, right? Nate Wiggins on one side, Marlon Humphrey in the slot. There was going to be some questions about bringing in free agent Chidobe Awuzie, second-year player TJ Tampa. They go and get Jaire Alexander, who has played, under 50% of the snaps over the last couple of years. But if he's healthy, fantastic buy low for $4 million because the guy can still play. When he is healthy, he's good. He hasn't dropped off in talent level. He's dropped off in just injury status. But the secondary looks great. Malachi Starks, Kyle Hamilton, the versatility at safety, Roquan Smith at linebacker as one of the better linebackers in the NFL. And then the other key two defensive tackles, Nnamdi Madubuike, and then Travis Jones heads into a contract year at defensive tackle. He continues to get better. So you're looking at literally every position group on this defense for the Ravens and should feel pretty good about it on that side of the ball as well.
Yeah, and all of them have added young talent as well. I mean, you've got young players. Mike Green, obviously the sort of star that we talked about, who could have been talent-wise, could have been a top 10 player in this draft. Getting him in the second, the reason why he slid to the second is still a live concern. But if you keep him on the straight and narrow, I mean, that could be one of the best value picks in the entire draft. And to get him in the second round, they've added, defensive interior players. They've added cornerbacks as well. I mean, they've added young talent just this year to every level of that defense.
So what do you think happens this year? The Ravens, the last 2 years, if I was to characterize the Ravens the last two seasons, remember Lamar Jackson battled some injuries and inconsistency before the 2023 season, but in 23 he wins the MVP, and in 24 has even better numbers, does not win the MVP. While he's been healthy these last 2 years, in the regular season, remember every time the Ravens played a good team, they crushed the Lions, they crushed the 49ers in 2023. Last year destroyed the Texans heading into the playoffs, and then heading into the playoffs. When they go up against good teams, except maybe the Chiefs.
Right.
Remember last year they beat the Bills handily early in the season. They have they're probably the most dominant regular season team that we've seen over the last couple of years. But then they run into the Chiefs in 23 in the AFC Championship, turnovers, kill them, and they just don't play their best game. Lamar doesn't play his best game.
Right.
Last year in the playoffs, Lamar does have a turnover or two, but still played well overall. But as a team, fumbles, drops, did not play well overall. I mean, this is, from an analysis standpoint, there's not much else to say other than do the same thing in the regular season, but put it all together on that playoff run.
Well, that's what's fascinating about the Ravens is usually when you have teams that have these weird sort of you hit a ceiling things, like the Dolphins or the Cowboys, it's generally when you run into the best teams, they lose, right? And it sort of carries over into the playoffs where the best teams generally are in the playoffs. So that's when you run into the wall and you lose. What's interesting about the Ravens is during the regular season, they murder the best teams. Like they face good teams that look dominant, and they destroy them. And then they get to the playoffs and they're not able to replicate that same level of play generally. And, most of the time, I think it is fair to say that has been a Lamar Jackson failing. He has not been able to live up to the play that he's had in the regular season in the playoffs. Now, again, I don't know that was true last season. I think that was the first year where he kind of actually did play pretty good postseason play and other people let him down. But it is weird for the Ravens where, usually they've been actually really good, not just against, teams they're supposed to beat, but against really good teams in the regular season. And then for some reason, they're not able to do that again in the playoffs.
Hey guys, just taking a quick break to tell you, hey, just over 50% of you are still unsubscribed to Check the Mic. It helps the channel. It helps to make sure that you don't miss any of our shows. So if you have a chance, hit the subscribe button right now. So are we gonna make official predictions here today? Or we're saving that for the Circa show. We will be back at Circa for a preseason predictions show. I think we can make official predictions then.
As in division winner?
Yeah, division winners and everything. Sure. We're going to save that for the Circa show. Just to wrap it up with the Ravens, Justin Tucker out at kicker. I mean, that's just a whole new world as well. And we usually, I'm anti-special teams.
Sure.
We know that.
As a principal.
But we also know that if there's one thing that could slow down the Ravens, where I'm listing their great offense and their great defense, and the number of times that I say on this show, good teams win in a multitude of ways. The Ravens have the multitude of ways to win. They can win with offense, defense, run game, pass game on both sides of the ball. Tyler Loop, rookie, 6th round kicker. Does their season come down? This is the only time I'm mentioning a kicker with the 32-team previews. Does this come down to the kicker where Justin Tucker?
There's at least one more that deserves mention. The kicking thing is interesting because on the one hand, Justin Tucker has been kind of the Derrick Henry of kickers, where the rules don't apply to him, right? We've been saying for a long period of time, don't draft kickers. There's basically no difference between the undrafted kickers, the drafted kickers, except if you draft them too high, you look utterly ridiculous when they fail. And it can be crippling because it's difficult to get away from those higher draft round, kickers, because you've made the commitment to them. Look at the 49ers right now, right? Would Jake Moody still be there if they hadn't spent a 3rd-round pick on him? No, they would have gotten rid of him already. So you almost trap yourself in this disastrous kicking situation by spending too much on them. However, the only kicker in the NFL that has basically consistently been able to avoid the variance and just be elite start to finish has been Justin Tucker until last year. So independent of all of his accusations and the fact that they probably had to move on from him anyway, last year he stopped being the on-field version of Justin Tucker as well for the first time in his career. So on the one hand, you're saying, look, the Ravens are now entering the world that everybody else typically resides in, which is you might have a good kicker, you might not in any given year, and it's kind of random. On the other hand, they did deal with this last year already. So it's just repeating last year as opposed to the usual state of play for Baltimore.
Do you want to give an over-under on the – we'll do our official predictions later, but we'll just give an over-under to wrap it up. 11.5 here for the Ravens. I know we did an over-under show months ago, but nobody remembers what we said.
Yeah, and I don't remember what I said either.
Right, so this is great.
11.5 it's a lot. I mean, it's a tough division still. You kind of feel Cleveland probably won't be good. Pittsburgh could be anything. Cincinnati should be good, even with questions on defense. And Baltimore should be the best team in the division. I guess I'm talking myself back into more than 11.5. Sure, over.
Yeah, I think the Ravens. I'm going to say the Ravens and Bills. This is their year in our previews. This is their year to make the Super Bowl run, right? So
they become the new Packers. Aaron Rodgers Packers every year.
That's right.
Is their year.
I went about 12 straight years of predicting Patriots, Packers, Brady,
the
Rodgers,
difference
Super
is
Bowl.
Rodgers and the Packers at least did it one time, like way back at the start, and then every year since then it was. This is their year again.
Even that component, you have John Harbaugh. I think he's a really good coach. I think he brings an edge there as far as 4th down decision making and just overall experience and always being a part of really good teams, and that ability to step up in those good games. Just have to figure it out from a playoff perspective for Baltimore. The last thing I'll say, and I don't know how much you can actually study this in the NFL, the NBA changed things over the years where they said, look, there's an 82-game regular season, which is different from that playoff run of winning 4 straight, best of 7 series. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's an NFL equivalent to you play differently in the playoffs. We talk about the Chiefs sometimes sleepwalking at times in the regular season and saving their good plays for the playoffs. I don't know if there's a legitimate strategy that you could try there, but if I'm Baltimore or Buffalo, those two teams who have come so close and have all the ingredients to go on a Super Bowl run, I wonder if there's some edge to be had there of there's something that needs to be saved for the playoffs, or a different style that needs to be played in the playoffs to make that run.
But the thing, I mean, we talked about it before, the thing I think that characterizes Kansas City's postseason is Mahomes and the elimination of mistakes. Like Mahomes, the biggest thing that changes, I think, is not that idea of, they're keeping their powder dry. Andy Reid's keeping all the good plays secret for the playoffs. Maybe there's some of that happening, though I doubt it, to be honest. I think it's probably more.
There is that feel, though. Like during the regular season, the last 2 years, the Chiefs' offense looked horrible, and then you get into the playoffs, it's like, why is this guy running wide open?
But
Andy's back in the playoffs.
I think it's more when that happens, and that definitely happened last year. Like, I mean, I forget how deep into the season, but we were in like cold weather, right? And it was like a Thursday night game, and Ryan Fitzpatrick was on TV and on the Amazon broadcast being like, this is going to run out. Like, this is unsustainable. You can't keep getting lucky effectively the way they have been all the way through the season and it still work. And, it's not a repeatable skill. And then they got it together, and obviously they made it to a Super Bowl before collapsing in that big game. And that leads to those narratives you're talking about. Oh, they're just sandbagging, they're keeping it. What I think it is, though, if it happens, is more they're okay with working it out over the course of the season. Like, it's not that they're keeping stuff back and, working on the good stuff in the background and just putting out these bad plays that they know will be good enough to get through a regular season. It's that they're genuinely in a funk, but they know they have till mid-January to figure it out. Like, they don't need to get this right in mid-October. They're like working this whole thing through, and so that by the time January comes, they figure the offense out and they understand what to do in the playoffs, and that's where it works. What I think the real difference is, though, with Kansas City in terms of being able to change the way they play is Mahomes genuinely goes from a moderately turnover or risk-prone quarterback in the regular season. Obviously, there's good that comes on the other side of that ledger as well. But he goes from that to one of the most careful quarterbacks in the NFL once we hit playoff football. Like, he goes from middle of the pack in turnover-worthy play percentage to Justin Herbert levels of you are not going to get a free one during the playoffs for his entire NFL career. Like, it is a switch that flips within Mahomes, whether it's conscious or otherwise, that has to change the way the entire offense plays because you're not getting those turnovers. That's the biggest difference I can think of any like individual player, team, whatever, where they play a different way in the playoffs than they do in the regular season.
It's still positivity off-season, so I'll take the over for a lot of teams, including the Ravens.
Well, let's start with the over anyway.
Over.
Let's see where we go from here.
Over 11.5 of the Ravens. It's their year, Ravens fans. It's your year, Ravens fans.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.